All right, so I'll be perfectly honest. I'm not the biggest horse racing fan. I don't watch religiously, especially for the Triple Crown. But I do get intrigued by good stories, and seeing Rich Strike that final push at the end was pretty spectacular. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, to see a guy with someone with 80-1 odds uh, come from behind really at the last leg and go on to win it, pretty remarkable. Obviously, what happened afterwards was pretty funny as well, but
Well, the
uh,
biting, I do listen. I'm pro Rich
partially
Strike.
concerning.
I'm pro Rich Strike. I'll just say that right now. I think the video, the aerial shot of the video, like the drone footage or
Oh
whatever it
yeah,
was,
so good.
is so fascinating to watch. That just great. That gives you a better understanding and appreciation of horse racing and just how the animals move. It's a similar thing they've got going. Kind of. I don't know if you've seen it recently in uh like NASCAR will do like drone shots. Like, because there's something about
Yes.
when you just see the cars at eye level, you don't actually see how much movement the cars are like, and the closest, and that's kind of like one of those, to me, things like that. But I mean, 80-1 odds. I mean, right now that's like, I don't even know who's at 80-1 odds. That's like, I don't know, like the Giants winning the Super Bowl. I think that they're at plus 8,000. That's pretty much it. I'm trying to look up right now. That's how
I mean, it's
crazy it
just
was that he
like
won. Panthers are at
throw
plus
ten
8,000.
dollars on someone. I mean, for some people who are going to the Kentucky Derby, planning to bet, even the layman, probably planning to bet between 100 and 200 bucks, maybe, to splurge on an event. That you put $10 on like a slew of horses and just take a
Oh,
flyer. Why not? That turns into 800 bucks.
oh, it's crazy.
It's wild.
80-1 odds. I mean, it literally is at this point in time, that is like you'd argue from the NFL Super Bowl to put into an NFL term, the Panthers are at plus 8,000, the Giants are like plus 8,000. Or like the Commanders plus 7,000, like one of them winning the Super Bowl. I know it's very
Yeah.
different, but that just goes to show you how little Vegas and the odds makers thought of this horse before it went on to win. And I think it was
Well, it was an alternate, right? It wasn't even
yeah,
initially
he
supposed
was
to
like
race
ranked
this
like
until last minute.
24th out of the 20 spots, and there was four horses that got moved around. He slid into it, and there was a lot of people making the argument that in the past couple of years, you've heard it more and more that they should have cut it down because the Kentucky Derby is one of the only races that does 20 horses. And they're like, there's too many
Yeah.
horses. But a win like this is only going to help the crowd of people who are like, no, 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 keep it a big field. It is like, it's great. I mean, it's the reason why people want the college playoff expanded. It is UMBC over Virginia. It is that improbable. And it is great when things like that happen in sports. It is so crazy to see.
It really is. It's fascinating. And then obviously had to big time the rest of the horses afterwards. Like, yeah, what's up?
Yeah.
Look
Well,
who's here.
He bit the guy who was apparently that was the guy who's on a horse who's trying to like escort them then to the winner's circle.
Yeah, yeah.
And the horse was just like, fuck this guy, and started biting his leg. You got to respect it. I don't know. I think to me, it's one of those, I'm not a conspiracy guy, but I mean, horse racing has had a bad couple years. And now with the Bob Baffert stuff with Medina Spirit after last year, Bob Baffert, if you don't know horse racing, he's like, and trust me, I don't know horse racing very well, but he's like
he's the Jerry Jones of like.
yeah. Well, I mean, he's like the GOAT of horse racing as far as owners go and like breeding and these horses and his horses winning a ton. And he's basically been suspended because they're like all his horses just doping and doping and doping. And so
it seemed like roid rage a little bit.
yeah. And for this 80-1 long shot to come out and win, I'm not saying that horse racing need it, like, you know what I mean, like they was staged, and
Sure.
I don't know how you'd stage this horse flipping, just going like just weaving through the pack on the final turn into the final stretch. How do you stage that? I don't know, but it certainly is. It was a good weekend for people who like horses.
It sure was. It sure was. And it was a good weekend once again for the NFL as, more and more news has developed throughout the league. And, we were starting, coming into this week, I'd say, and maybe into the next couple, things are going to
Yeah.
smooth over a little bit, even though there's going to be tons of speculation now about what happens with these rookies and things like that. But, real quick before we go into this episode, which is going to just feature us really giving our thoughts on the winners and losers from this past offseason. That includes free agency, trades, acquisitions, the draft, of course, and who came out on top, who we think fell short after all is said and done there. But, before we get into that, Mark, Patrick Mahomes was mistaken. Or I should say Paolo Banchero, really.
Was mistaken as Patrick Mahomes.
As Patrick Mahomes, a reporter for a British television
BBC.
network.
I'm pretty sure it was BBC.
Was it? Okay, because it said Sky on the actual mic flag. But I didn't know if that might be a branch
Sky
of BBC.
That's like their sports, like Sky View Sports or whatever in America. Because there's an F1 race in Miami.
Yeah. So Martin Brundle was reporting, and he was, out there basically on the track trying to talk to some, various people, some celebrities, high-profile people that were there to watch the race. Obviously, Miami is a hot spot for a lot of celebrities, especially this time of year. And you could see he's calling after Patrick Mahomes, and the guy's not responding. His back's to him, and he keeps walking away. So Martin Brundle's chased him down, like, Patrick, hold on, I want to interview, ask you some questions. Finally catches up to him, and you can tell the second the guy turns around. I mean, I'll give it to him. I guess from the back, it did somewhat look like Patrick Mahomes. Really, the hairdo and the fact that he's a tall athlete.
Yeah.
But he's clearly way taller than Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, Banchero's like
once he
6'9".
Yeah, he plays for Duke, or played for Duke, is going to be in the NBA draft. But for once he turns around, you would think, okay, now he's going to notice it and move on. But he didn't seem to notice yet. He
didn't notice till the end of the interview. Yeah.
Kept calling him Patrick, and obviously, Paolo's just doing his best to appease the interview. But that was just hilarious. I mean, at the end, Martin Brundle says something to the effect of, "Well, you weren't who I thought you were. You are not Patrick Mahomes, and that explains why you didn't answer. So have a good day." Just laughed and walked away.
It was very British. It was very British. It was very funny. Check out the video if you can. It is interesting. Talk about a sport that's growing. F1, that Netflix show. People ever since that Netfllix show come on, I haven't watched it.
I've heard a lot about it.
Survive. Basically what it is so the current season of F1 racing is going on, and Netflix follows the big teams, and it's very much it's very filled with drama, even more so than NASCAR. People see the fights in NASCAR, but F1, I mean, it's crazy, especially because F1 is such a different sport than NASCAR, but basically it's only coming in fifth is insanely good for F1. Your team, if you come in fifth, you just wow, it's it made your whole season, you celebrate. It's really hard to win. It's very, very different. And the top 2 or 3 teams just dominate everything. And they, but anyways, it was the first ever road course, or the first time in a long time F1 is going to Miami. And so it was a huge, huge event. Michael Jordan was there. Tom Brady was there. I don't know if you saw the video of those two guys embracing.
I did not. I didn't see that.
That was a really cool video I saw circulating Twitter. That was one of those where it's the only time I'm comfortable with ESPN using multiple GOAT symbols is when Tom Brady and Michael Jordan get together.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You know what I mean? I think we've had that argument on this show before about the multiple GOATs. And you can't.
It's literally, it gets out of hand.
Well, it's literally, the idea is you can only have one. That's why it's the greatest, the GOAT.
There's no multiple different categories,
but you can have multiple.
Once you start mixing in the same one,
doesn't
nearly hold as much water. I will say, isn't F1 a lot of road course though?
It's all road course. So that's what it was in Miami.
This was just the first time in Miami that it was a road course.
I don't want to say first time ever, but first time in a long time that they had a Miami road course along South Beach and all that.
Because I was going to say, I'm not very well versed in racing. I know you've followed NASCAR a lot longer and a lot more closely than I do.
NASCAR,
but in terms of just being a layman, very much on the outside spectator, I've always enjoyed casually watching F1 more because I like the road course element.
Yeah,
But road courses in NASCAR just doesn't work.
it's
It's
tougher
not
than that.
conducive for the vehicles, and it
It's
doesn't.
absolutely right.
Yeah, it just
NASCAR's,
doesn't look very well.
yeah,
Like it's not a good product on TV, but for Formula One, it's awesome, and I like that there's a lot of different, fast turns and
Formula One
speed
cars are
dips and things like
designed
that.
to make more turns drastically and at higher speeds,
Yeah,
where NASCAR vehicles are really designed for the oval. And that's most of the track. It's just a very different sport in that way. NASCAR has done a good job, though, in the last couple of years. They've started bringing back some dirt track where they literally do on dirt tires at like Bristol. That's really cool. And they have increased the amount of road courses, knowing that people want to see that more. And there are certain drivers, like an Austin Cinderic in NASCAR, who are specialty road course guys. And now they're starting, like, if you can get, teams are trying to build like, hey, you got to have at least one road course guy. So your team, is a team Hendrick or team, Penske can try to get a win or two like during the year on those road courses. So NASCAR's got some work to. I will say this though. I don't understand Formula One, how it works, like the points and the season and everything. NASCAR has done a great job of making the playoffs like must watch TV if you're a fan or a casual fan, because of the eliminations, the big races. Can I just say before we jump into it here and switch back to football, I pulled up the odds makers to try and compare it to that, to the Kentucky Derby and that horse winning.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you could guess who are the top four favorites right now for the Super Bowl, like betting favorites with the lowest odds. Take a guess.
The lowest.
So like the four favorites. I will say, I'll give you this. Okay. It's 2 AFC teams and 2 NFC teams.
Okay, so the way you deliver that makes me think that, it's not going to be the direct obvious guess. So I'm going to go with in the AFC, I'm going to guess the Chargers are included in this, or maybe it's the Broncos. I'm going to go Broncos.
Broncos are not in the top 4.
Okay, so it's not the Broncos in the AFC. I guess I'll go Chargers then. I'm going to stick with my initial.
Chargers are not in the top 4.
Oh, wow. Okay. So
you actually can get some pretty good odds on the Broncos. They're at plus 1,700 right now.
Oh,
the Chargers
I would absolutely take that.
Plus 1,600. They are your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th, and 8th favorites. Chargers are ahead of the Broncos.
Okay. That's
I know this is. It was it kind of blows my mind. The NFC teams, one of them, it really shocked me.
I mean, look, I'd be surprised if they put the Bengals as among the 2 top AFC, but I'm going to guess it because
it's not the Bengals. The
Ravens then.
The Bengals are at plus 2,000. So talk about good value. If you think the Bengals have a chance, they are. The Cowboys have better odds. Like you have you have a better favorite. Vegas says than the Bengals to get to the Super Bowl. Ravens are also plus 2,000. No, here, let me give it to you. The team with the lowest odds right now, plus 650, is the Buffalo Bills. They are the NFL Super Bowl favorite right now.
Okay.
Number 2 is the Buccaneers at plus 750. I would have guessed 3 would have been the Rams, but they're not. Yeah. The Rams are the 5th best at plus 1,100. It's the Packers plus 1,000, Chiefs plus 1,000. They're 3 and 4.
I just don't. How are the Packers?
That's because it's the fan base thing. It's the fan base thing. That's Vegas trying to cover their butts. You know what I mean? Like, that's people, like, you got a lot of Packers fans. They're a huge organization with a huge fan base. Off season, everyone likes to put flyers.
I don't know.
Everyone likes to put flyers on there. Yeah, but they just don't have. I mean, the Rams. It's still. I mean, I think part of it's got to be. It's just tough to repeat. Like, that's got to be part of it. But
so what are they, like, plus 300 or something like that?
No, the Rams are plus 1,100. They're in 5th place. Okay. Yeah. Man, that's crazy.
That is
11 to 1 odds.
I would not have guessed that.
No, that's what shocked me too. I was looking at it. Yeah. I quickly guessed who's the team that's the worst odds.
Worst odds got to be the Texans.
Texans are the worst. Texans. Then
Jaguars,
Falcons, Texans, Falcons, Seahawks, Jets, Lions, Jags are your bottom 6.
Wow, the Jags actually. rose up the ranks a little bit.
I know.
That's, quarterback does matter, I guess, and so
It
they
does.
probably still feel that Trevor Lawrence is going to
Davis Mills
make up the difference there.
a millie.
But yeah, so that's a good segue and starter for what we're going to talk about today, Mark, and just being the kind of outlining some of what we think are winners and losers from this offseason, taking everything into account. So
yeah,
players lost, players acquired, and through the various means, trade, draft, free agency, all that good stuff. So if you want to start by giving me a team that you think is a winner from this past offseason, and then I'll give my thoughts, and we'll just kind of go back and forth, I guess.
Great.
In that regard. So
yeah, I have a lot that make the list. I'm going to try to go a little off the beaten path because I'm sure we have some similar teams that we'll touch on. But I think a team that is a winner, I'll start with the defending Super Bowl champion, the Rams. I think obviously when I say a winner, I don't mean necessarily that, I think that they have a Super Bowl chance. I just mean, I think as of right now where they are, I like them going into this year based on certainly like getting better. I think you add Allen Robinson and you add Bobby Wagner, you add I think a better wide receiver than OBJ. And all of a sudden you have Cooper Kupp and now Allen Robinson you add into that lineup. I think that is so dynamic. That is so dangerous. Allen Robinson is going to be such a weapon for the Rams this year. And I think it's one of those underlying signings that people forget about. That when you remind yourself, you're like, shit, the Rams got Allen Robinson. Like that's such a pickup. And everyone wondering, why is OBJ not signed? Why is OBJ? Well, yeah, the Rams got Allen Robinson. Like they definitely do not need OBJ at this point in time. And then Bobby Wagner. I mean, I know they spent a lot of money for Bobby Wagner, but they still get probably I think Bobby Wagner's going to have a great year. New scenery, in division, playing in LA. He is guaranteed money and a big contract. I don't like Bobby Wagner in 3 years on that contract, but next year I really like Bobby Wagner. So I'll start a little bit off the beaten path with the Rams. I think are a winner so far this offseason as far as getting better.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. Even if, which it's seeming increasingly likely OBJ's not coming back. You said it's not only offset, but they gained by taking Allen Robinson. He's better right now than OBJ is right now in their respective careers. So even if they don't get OBJ back, Robinson fits perfectly into that, number 3 wide receiver role, which is crazy that OBJ would likely be number 4 on the depth chart.
I know.
He'd be number 2 most other places, if not number 1. So that is pretty insane. For me, a winner of the offseason is I'll just go right off the bat and get the homer pick out of the way. But for me, it's Pittsburgh Steelers. I think overall, what they were, and honestly, this is kind of aside from the draft. I'm not even necessarily factoring much of the draft into it, because I think what they did was they lost Juju Smith-Schuster and James Washington, and they offset it with getting George Pickens and Calvin Austin in the draft. So I think that's a fairly much a watch, considering George Pickens was projected to be a first round pick, and obviously they got their quarterback situation. I think overall
they're better in the quarterback room. Yeah.
Yes, I think it's a very slight upgrade in the quarterback room from Ben Roethlisberger last year. His immobility was a huge problem in an offense that was not built for it. I mean, Matt Canada, his offense couldn't be further from what Ben's skill set was. So to bring in mobile guys, I think that helps that offense out a lot. And they upgraded the offensive line big time. I am still baffled that the Bears did not commit to James Daniels, a 24-year-old with over 2 years of starting experience in the NFL.
And the Bears have money to spend. It does. I agree. It made no sense.
And Ryan Poles is an offensive line guy. Maybe he just wanted to draft his own dudes, but I was really excited about that. And they got Mason Cole. Their offensive line, instant upgrade. Defensively, they got Miles Jack and obviously Levi Wallace from the Bills. They upgraded in some significant areas on the defense as well. So all in all, I think they were certainly winners this offseason, and not to mention what I think were pretty good draft picks overall.
It's interesting you said that. I didn't have the Steelers of the 8 teams I have listed down, but I guess you can convince me. Yeah, I guess if you look at it, I do think they are improved. Because again, we're not projecting, do we think they're going to be a playoff team, or like we're just saying right now, versus where they were 2 months ago, are they better? And you're right. I do think the Steelers are in a better spot. When you just have your quarterback situation a little more firm, that obviously means you're in a better spot. And they did make some good moves this offseason.
It is weird too, because I'm not necessarily projecting, like you said, like I'm not necessarily even projecting them to win more games next year, which you would think that's almost like intuitively baked into them improving. I just think overall it's a better roster. Whether or not that's going to translate in year one with a lot of new guys, I don't know. But there's no question the offensive line's a huge improvement, and that, can make or break a team. Last year's unit was pretty rough. So yeah.
Yeah. All right. Now our listeners are yelling at us because we've been stupid and we've avoided the obvious choices. So let's get to the obvious choices. The Broncos. Obviously, the Broncos are much improved.
Huge.
It's tough because a lot of people say, "Oh, well, you get Nathaniel Hackett. That's an upgrade." I don't necessarily know if it's an upgrade. I like Vic Fangio a lot. I think Vic Fangio proved that he can be a head coach in this league. I think he had some deficiencies. He struggled at times, but I don't know if that's automatically an upgrade. But I will say, obviously, when you bring in a quarterback who's on the trajectory of a Hall of Fame career in the middle of his prime, when you as a team have been so quarterback needy for the past couple of years, that's amazing. So obviously, plus Randy Gregory, I think is a great add to their defense as well. For at least this year. I don't know if I love Randy Gregory 3 years from now, talking about like the Von Miller deal, like for the Bills. But for this next upcoming season, I like it a lot. So I'll go Broncos next.
Okay, fair enough. I'm going to go with another, what I think is a pretty open and shut case as well for most improved. And that would be Miami, a team that was coming into this season with a lot of question marks about how is that, like, what's going to happen with Tua, and we still don't know what's going to happen with Tua in terms of how he's going to pan out in this league, let alone pan out in Miami. But what they did was they made big, prolific trades, got themselves one of the best playmakers in the entire league in Tyreek Hill. They went and, got themselves a new head coach, kind of a fresh start, and an offensive-minded head coach, which is obviously necessary, or at least a very big help to a young quarterback like Tua. Get Raheem Mostert, Chase Edmonds, really stack up that running game. They go and get themselves, franchise tag Gesicki, keep him in town. Teron Armstead, they
was just going to say
too. So it's, they made a lot of moves, and that's just aside from the draft, in which there wasn't anything sexy about the draft really, but because they didn't have any picks early on. But they were able to, address some big areas of need in the draft, inside linebacker with their first pick. But I think getting Tyreek Hill to pair with Jalen Waddle, fortifying the run game there, huge step towards big improvements for Miami. Again, whether that translates to actual wins, it's all going to rely on what happens with Tua. And they're not in the easiest division to contend with. But I see a lot of improvement there overall for just the roster aspect.
My reaction at the beginning when you said Miami was because I have them at the very bottom, near the bottom of my list of like just making this list. I don't think they are an open and shut. And I think so much of it has to do with the fact that Mike McDaniel is very unknown. And, Brian Flores seemed to be dealing with a lot in Miami. And I think Brian Flores, can coach and create a culture. I don't think he was the problem there. At all. I think he's been dealing with a really bad ownership group, meddling, and a lot of outside factors. So we'll see. I certainly do think if you look at the names on the sheet of paper, yes, Miami is better. And that's why they do belong on this list. But I'm a little less sold on Miami. And a lot of it is, I think, the outside factors of it. I just don't trust Miami as an organization. And obviously with Tua being a part of it as well. I'll go to one that I think is an open and shut case. The Los Angeles Chargers. I'll stay in L.A. Khalil Mack, J.C. Jackson. That's really all you got to say. I mean, they get two incredible starters who are at the peak. Khalil Mack is still in the prime of his career. And I think Khalil Mack coming into a situation where he's not number one and he's number two to Bosa, I think is going to be great for Khalil Mack. That defensive line is just going to be incredible. And J.C. Jackson is, you can argue, the best at his position in the league. He got paid like it, and he was the prize, one of the prizes of the offseason so far. So I think it's simple. And again, I don't know if it means it's going to be that many more wins, but I know it means as a fan, if I see them on my schedule, it doesn't feel like I can just check a W, right? You know what I mean? We always talk about that when the schedules come out. Where can I check some W's? The Chargers don't feel like a check W for pretty much everyone in the league.
Yeah, no, I think they're greatly improved. And the pick with Zion Johnson, the massive guard out of Boston College, their first round pick. I mean, that's they addressed so many areas of concern, and they were able to lock up Mike Williams. I mean,
bringing back Mike Williams,
kept themselves with a consistent base on offense. They didn't lose anyone of notable importance, and they stacked their defense with 2 all-pro caliber players. Pretty darn good on that front. Not to mention, I thought the pick of Isaiah Spiller, the running back, late too, just to help give some running back depth there, a nice choice in the draft as well. For me, another team that I would say saw some significant improvement, and this was largely from the draft, admittedly so, the New York Jets. And we talked about them being big winners on draft day as well, but for them to get what very well could be, and I know these guys are unproven, but by all accounts, a top 2 corner in the draft, getting a stud defensive end edge rusher late in the first round, getting a top tier wide receiver as well, and then going and getting Breece Hall in the second round. I mean, they added 4 instant starters likely, and then they got a really good pass catching tight end as well in the draft. And then obviously they were able to do, some less than, sexy additions, more depth signings than anything else, but Solomon Thomas, Laken Tomlinson along the offensive line, Jordan Whitehead at safety. So they overall, it seems like an adult is in the room in New York. They made a lot of what seemed to be smart choices rather than constantly trying to swing for the fences with every pick they make. They went with a much more sound approach, and I think things are looking good for New York. However, I'm just not totally sold on Zach Wilson yet, and so I'm not super confident in them as a team in general. But I think they're set up to succeed way better this year than they were starting last season.
Yeah, a lot of people love throwing praise on Joe Douglas, the GM from the Jets, because of this past draft. But he's also the same guy that drafted Zach Wilson. And so, I mean, he's got to be tied to that.
You'd feel so much better with Justin Fields in New York going into this year. I mean, my goodness, they'd be a dark horse candidate to win that division. Or
Mac Jones, just even someone who's steady and has maybe the lower ceiling, but just not as more durable. I mean, Zach Wilson was a nightmare from all aspects of what we said last year. Inexperienced, wild, looked under athletic at times, like Johnny Manziel, where you're like, well, the athleticism doesn't necessarily translate at all times when it certainly did in college. Plus, I mean, the injuries. I mean, for an undersized guy. So absolutely, it's funny you went with the Jets in front of a couple other teams. I have at least 2 teams I would have taken is more improved than before the Jets. I'll go one of them now. And the reason I say I feel more confident that they're more improved is because of the actual NFL already proven entities they brought in compared to just draft capital. And now I'll start with the Raiders. I mean, Devontae Adams, Chandler Jones, and don't forget Josh McDaniels. Josh McDaniels gets his official second time as a head coach. I know there was the weird day he was the head coach of the Colts and then not day he was the head coach of the Colts. But I think this is a Raiders team that adds the best offensive weapon possibly in the NFL, especially with DeAndre Hopkins missing time now. I think you could argue there's no better offensive weapon than Devontae Adams. Tyreek Hill maybe, but they're right there, 1A, whatever you want to say. And you got a guy, Chandler Jones, again, his immediate impact next year, I think, is still going to be felt. And you get a head coach that comes in that he feels so much to me in a much better spot in a different part of his life to be ready to take on a job like this and to be the head coach of the Vegas Raiders. So I think the Raiders are vastly improved. Again, does it mean it translates to wins and a playoff success? They have a tough division, but they're a playoff team that got a better. This is so weird to say. A playoff team that took the eventual AFC champions into near overtime, got the best wide receiver in the NFL, got an impact player on defense at a position of need, and got a better head coach. Like it's a crazy offseason for a team that not a lot of people are talking about because their division is so stacked. But again, the Raiders are now officially a team that if I see them pop up on my team's schedule, there's very few teams in the league that can easily circle that as a W. I mean, besides maybe like you could argue like a Tampa or a Rams, I don't know many other teams you can see like, nope, that should be an easy W when the Raiders come to town. So, I'll take the Raiders as a vastly improved team as well.
Agree with that one for sure. Another one for me is the Baltimore Ravens. Half of this has to do with the fact that they enter this season with healthy running backs. So that could change, but
hopefully
we'll see.
Knocking all the wood for the Ravens.
They lost 3 running backs before the season even began last year.
Yeah, and
so that they're an instant improvement there. But they went and got Morgan Moses, a proven veteran tackle. They went and locked up their guy Marcus Williams at safety, and then they go in the draft and take the number 1 safety off the board and the number 1 center off the board just to start things off in the first 2 rounds there. Pretty impressive start for them, or I should say first round, because the second round they got David Ajabo. So I think overall, really, really solid draft and really solid, not sexy picks by any means for the Ravens. But when a team like the Ravens, who doesn't have a whole lot of needs, you're not going to have blockbusters very often. The Rams are like the one anomaly in that situation. But I think the Ravens are very poised to go win the North this year, because I had them picked to win it last year before the wheels completely fell off. And I'm not so sure the Bengals improved nearly as much as Baltimore did. And so I think that's scary. Lamar just needs to stay healthy. And if he does, and their run game overall stays intact, which I know that's, those are big ifs, but if that happens, they could be a 1 seed. They're that good and that talented and capable.
Yeah, and you just love the coaching staff. You love the organization. They don't stay down for long. And so a Ravens, a team that missed the playoffs, certainly poised for the big bounce back. Quickly, Dan, I just have, I don't know how many more you have on your list. I have, I'll say
a lot of the other ones were kind of lukewarm candidates.
I have one more that I feel pretty strongly about. Okay, let me just say this. The Jags, we talked about the Jags with their draft picks, but I will say, again, remember, Brandon Scherf, Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, those are all 3 players that come in and can help make a difference. Obviously, Brandon Scherf, big time. But Christian Kirk, I think, will be a huge target for Trevor Lawrence. And then I think the biggest, for them, you go from the disaster at this point in time last year that we didn't know yet was coming with Urban Meyer to now Douglas Peterson. Doug Peterson, I at least know that he understands how an NFL camp should run, and he understands how you need to interact with NFL players. Like, that in itself is a vast improvement for the Jags. And then, all right, so I'll feel good about saying that. If you miss this other team, then I'll pick them up for you.
Okay, I was going to say Detroit, so I don't know if that's.
I was not going to say Detroit just because again, I feel lukewarm about Detroit. I didn't have them high in this enough. My thing was the Eagles.
I didn't have them high either. Okay,
the Eagles with literally A.J. Brown alone with and Jordan Davis, but AJ Brown, like the Eagles needed to get that piece to go with Devontae Smith and their offense is growing. I think that is a noted that team's better.
Fair enough. Yeah, absolutely. I would put them ahead of Detroit for sure. To be fair, I didn't come into this with rankings. I just had a list of teams and
I get it.
Talking about them in at various lengths. But Detroit was on my list, but it was definitely, one of the lukewarm choices for sure. Just because.
Can I ask, did you have the Indianapolis Colts on your list? Because they were the last I put on my list. And I would just say, again, because of Matt Ryan, you forget Matt Ryan's in Indy. That team is going to be better. Like Matt Ryan in your organization for this year with that group, who's now, it's a group of your core players and your core leadership that is used to quarterback changes. And then you get a guy that is going to be a solid B plus for the season if he's healthy. Like, I think that is a team that is much improved because of basically one move. I think they had an okay draft and some other moves they made. If I was the Colts, I've said it before, I would still be calling Julio Jones to try and get a deal done. There's moves I would make to try to, really go all in on a 1-year run. I think they could still get better.
Yeah, I think it would largely just be from the Matt Ryan signing, though, and that's kind of why I took them off. And I understand it's a fairly, solid improvement, but what he brings you in sort of stability and less reckless play at the quarterback position, equally he gives you a lack of mobility and anything capable to extend plays very often in that offense. And to be fair to Carson Wentz, he had one of his more efficient seasons of his career last year in terms of turnovers. Now,
true, he
obviously didn't come up big in moments that were needed, and the end of the season loss to the Jaguars is going to stick with him for quite some time. But I guess I just didn't see it as massive of a jump that stood out to me. But I think that could be a very sneaky pick in terms of, a team that improved just by getting some, stability there at that position for sure.
Overall, I'll say it's easier for fans to look at everything and say, oh, that team got better. Like, I think there's an argument. A lot of people would argue, and you've seen some lists if you go online, like, oh, the Bears are worse. And while, yes, by the fact that you lose Khalil Mack, I mean, that and Allen Robinson, like, that hurts. But I would make the argument that, like, oh, well, you got rid of what we thought was the biggest problem with your head coach and the culture with the head coach and the offense. So
fair.
Maybe with their new head coach and their new offensive coordinator, they're like a huge, we don't know, like it's always easier, I think, for fan bases and fans to look at your organization and convince you got better. Unless you're obviously going tanking, which I know we're going to turn to a lot of these teams now. I think there's about 4 teams in the league that it was pretty obvious now. They're like, oh, okay, they're not necessarily trying to win. They're in a year where it's like, this is their reset year.
Yeah. I think
like the
fair.
Patriots post Brady, it's like, okay, that's a reset year. They're not better than they were last year. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. So look, I'll throw one out there for a team that was one of the biggest losers of the offseason. And for me, one of the top ones that came to mind instantly was Seattle.
Yeah.
And obviously the loss of Russell Wilson spearheads that. And that's a huge, huge loss that cannot be understated. And it was that paired with the fact that they clearly are not interested in addressing the quarterback position. Barring some, very surprising news of a Baker Mayfield acquisition, we don't see that happening. It looks like they're sticking with Drew Lock, and it's pretty obvious that this team is on the fast track to 4th place in the NFC West and a potential top 5 pick in the draft. And then not only that, but they lost Bobby Wagner and didn't go out and get a replacement for that. So while they addressed offensive tackle, a huge need for this team for the past decade in the draft, it wasn't enough for me to kind of salvage just how rough of an offseason it's been for them overall.
Yeah.
So
As soon as I totally agree, they're number one on my list as well. And as soon as your organization decides to trade Russell Wilson, you are going to be losers of that deal and of whatever until
you know that's going to
like
happen.
I said, until you prove to me that you've now got the future of your quarterback position set. And like I said on this show, I said on my own show, I give the Seahawks a window. You need to prove to me by the start of the 2024 season you have the plan in place. They have clearly sold it, and the fact that it's coming, that we think our quarterback is available in the next year's draft or next year's free agency market or next year's trade market, and that's fine if you feel like that's the route you want to go. And they built their team in other ways. Their team did get better in some ways, I do think, but overall as a roster, you can't say that they're better than they were when the season ended because you don't have a quarterback. You just don't.
We talked about this in the trade real quick. We talked about this in the draft recap episode, so I'm not going to, go too deep a dive into it, but I see this could potentially be devastating for them in terms of when you can address the quarterback position, and maybe they just didn't feel remotely good about it, and fine, that's fair. But look, if they're really like, oh, we can take one of 5 quarterbacks next year and we're fine with all 5 of them, then I guess okay. But I just think the plan can backfire quickly. Teams can trade up in front of you.
Yeah.
Take away the guy, your CJ Stroud that you were banking on to tank for this year, or something like that. Bryce, it could go poorly for them. And then they're left to go to free agency and try and, if Jimmy Garoppolo, is available next year, then they're going to have to pick up a guy like him or something. Unless Drew Lock somehow works out, which I don't think any of us think that's going to happen.
I get it that you can be that. You certainly allowed as a fan or any looking at it to have that feeling of like, what, we're screwed. Like the glass is half empty. I'll look at it, at this point, if I'm a Seahawks fan, I'll say I like that my team is committed to finding the right guy and not just getting a guy to get a guy.
Sure.
Because it does muddy it. I mean, look at what the Eagles are stuck in. As good as it is that the Eagles made the playoffs and are improving, we still sit here and don't put the Eagles in that Super Bowl window because, well, is Jalen Hurts really the guy? He's good. But is he really the guy? And that's the worst place to be in the NFL. As much as it was tough, with like the Mitchell Trubisky thing, I will say the thing I'm most excited about my Bears organization in the last decade, and there's not been a ton to be excited about, is they drafted a quarterback high and they did not extend him. They played it out and they thought this isn't working, and you saw enough. And then they said, let's give the coach a chance to prove that he's the right coach. And he didn't prove it. And then you moved on. That is what you have to do.
That kind of makes my point, though, because to me, it's about throwing darts at a dartboard.
Well, yes.
It's pretty clear that
they're
all NFL teams
darts.
are bad.
They punted on these darts. You're absolutely right. It's the best way to say it. They punted on those
NFL teams
darts.
Can't evaluate quarterbacks properly, and that's because I don't think it might not be possible. I don't know if it's possible to accurately evaluate quarterbacks at the college level. There are aspects of the game, sure, but look at how many high-profile quarterbacks don't pan out, and how many third round, fourth round guys end up, being in the league and stuff. It just that's, to me, you got it when you have an opportunity to take quarterbacks, you go for it. I liked the fact that they did address offensive tackle. Like, I was like, if you're not going to go quarterback, then do that. I thought for sure in the second round, when they still had all the other quarterbacks available, take a flyer on one of these guys.
I will
just
say,
because I think it behooves you. Or even, the third round, Sam Howell was still available. It's like, pick a guy, pick someone, and just see if it works out, because it might. And then you're great. And then you wouldn't have to give up much capital to do it if they did a second or third round pick in that. So
it's valid. It's valid. I do think I am giving the credit. I'm giving the Seahawks credit for a plan that we don't know exists. You know what I mean? Like, I am,
Sure,
but
yeah.
it's the only thing that makes sense to me of why they've done what they did. But I think after this, what we should talk about, and I think there's a larger point that we can get into, and I can kick off that conversation. We get to it, is a little bit of what Pete Carroll said about Baker Mayfield the other day. I don't know if you caught that quote about trading for a quarterback. we can talk about that because I have some strong thoughts. And I think it's not only speaks what the Seahawks are doing, but I think it's a larger, like, the NFL and their qualms with the Cleveland Browns and what happened. Let's get back to the losers. I'm going to go, another one is Atlanta. Well, again, when you start a rebuild and you commit to moving on from your quarterback, you're going to be a loser in this. I mean, I do think that I like that they went and got Ritter. They got a guy that they can throw at the wall at some point in time this year. He will start games for them and they'll get a look at him. I think the Mariota is a great choice for a veteran to come in and be a spot starter and until you need, or that point for your organization to move on to the young person. I do think that they had a nice draft, but you also got to remember they lose Ridley for the whole year. Like, that story's buried, but he's out. One of the best receivers in the whole league, a true number one, is out because of the gambling thing. So they're missing their best receiver. They lost their starting quarterback. They now have a journey veteran guy and a third round rookie. Yeah, it's going to be a tough year in Atlanta. The only reason I worry for Atlanta, because Atlanta's another team that seems like they want to be in the top 5 for a draft pick for a quarterback. Problem is, they may win too many games because the rest of their division isn't exactly great. I mean, Carolina, you're going to sit there and say that Atlanta versus Carolina, those are going to be brutal games to watch. They might have 2 third-round rookie quarterbacks starting in those games where the goal of both organizations is to lose. You know what I mean? And then the Saints, obviously, I think are a step above both those teams, but I don't know if by much with a new head coach and an injured Jameis coming back. That NFC South is just, it's going to be ugly at times. So Atlanta's definitely a loser this offseason. Again, it doesn't mean that I don't necessarily like what they've done or the direction they're going. I do think it was time for them to reboot and move on from Matt Lyon. But again, when you make that choice, you're going to be a loser in the offseason.
Yeah, that's just kind of how it goes. I'm going to go with, and I struggled with this one, to be honest with you, because there's still the Green Bay Packers, but I feel like the Green Bay Packers, primarily, you lose Devontae Adams, you lose the best receiver in the league.
Yep.
The second best, if not the best player on your team. And not only that, you lost all of the depth behind him. Equinemius St. Brown, gone. MVS, gone.
Yep.
So the guys on your team right now are Randall Cobb, who, despite Aaron Rodgers bringing him on board with the team last year, saw minimal targets and made minimal impact. And Alan Lazard as like the guy. And then obviously, they addressed wide receiver eventually in the draft. But I think that their solid additions in the draft to the defensive side of the ball still doesn't outweigh the massive loss of a Devontae Adams and the rest of the depth on your team there. Christian Watson, super raw. I'm just not ready to say that we're going to see an impact from this guy early on. We might. What if he Jamar chases us? He could. And then all of a sudden, maybe they're on the improved list rather than the regressing list. But those are some big shoes to fill.
No, the Packers belong on at least the list of, like, they didn't get better. Like they didn't get better. When you lose Devontae Adams, you can't tell me you got better. I know they got a draft pick for him, and I know that they got a defensive starter for him, basically, and they got some other capital. And I do like the Watson pick out of North Dakota State. I think he's going to be really good. And I hate to say that. And I think he will have a successful season because he has Aaron Rodgers. But they do belong in the criticism of, again, when you trade the superstar, for the most part, you're the loser until you prove that what you got in return is better. Like, the Chiefs don't necessarily belong on this list either, because the Chiefs got so much, I think, more for Tyreek Hill. Like, overall, I feel like they just got more. I know it's only a couple picks or here or there, but also they have a quarterback who's is still just the beginning of his prime and is in a better attitude situation. And their offense still has a lot of pieces. And they did replace some of that production. You brought in a Juju Smith-Schuster. you did make draft moves. So I'm not getting people like, oh, well, you said if you lose the star, you're a loser. But you can replace some of that to where, all right, I'm not going to add you to the winner list. I'm not going to add you to the loser list if you're the Chiefs. But I do think the Packers belong somewhere closer to the loser list than the winner list for this offseason. The final one that I'll make a case for, that to me is listen, I'm not going to waste time on things like the Texans or other like that, but that I'll make a case for that I would argue should get criticism for their offseason is Tennessee. Tennessee, I think you've created a lot of drama for a team that was always under the radar and very drama-free, especially since Ryan Tannehill showed up. You did so many things we praised Tennessee for over the past couple of years. Think about all the moves they made that were right. They kept replacing offensive coordinators, and their offense stayed good. It was Matt LaFleur. It was Arthur Smith. And they keep replacing guys, and their offense still clicked. They got Tannehill at a discount. They had got Tannehill to agree to that really good contract for them to make moves. They went and they were aggressive in trying to get in Julio Jones and say, you know what, we're going to try to be aggressive. We're in a win now mode. I know you have teams like the Chiefs in the AFC and the Bills in the AFC, but we're going to be aggressive and win now. Those are all things that we praise them for. Mike Vrabel, coach of the year. But all of the Tennessee's done in the past couple weeks has been pretty drama-filled. You get rid of a bona fide star wide receiver for a rookie. Again, on paper, it looks okay because you didn't have to pay A.J. Brown, even though I would have paid A.J. Brown. And he's durable. He's big. He's exactly what you want in the NFL as a number one wide receiver right now, especially with a guy like Tannehill throwing him the ball. And you lose that, and you hope to replace him with an unproven rookie, but a guy who's got a lot of upside. So I still think that's a negative. And you've now created a bunch of drama in the quarterback room. And I don't blame Ryan Tannehill for saying what he did. I support Ryan Tannehill for saying, I'm not someone's mentor. Ryan Tannehill he's not Aaron Rodgers, okay? And he's a lot more like Alex Smith. And Alex Smith, bless his heart, said, you know what? No, I will help the young guy out. I'll look after Patrick Mahomes. I'll do what's right for the organization. Bless his heart. You want your quarterback to do that, but I'm not going to say that you're required to do it, and I'm certainly not mad that Tannehill didn't do it. He has every right to say, there's no way I'm mentoring this guy. If he learned something from me, great, fine, whatever. But he's only going to learn stuff because I'm going to outwork his ass because this is my job and my team. I love that attitude from Tannehill. I think Tannehill's poised to have a good year because of that, but I do think it's created drama. And anytime Ryan Tannehill has a slightly bad game and the Titans lose, and if you looked at the Titans' schedule, it ain't easy. Even though they're in the AFC South and they have some guaranteed wins, they're going to struggle, I think, to break that 9-10 win mark. It's going to be tough for them to get there, depending on Derrick Henry, depending on how the rookie wide receiver turns out, all these factors. So I think the Titans did themselves a disservice in a way by creating a little bit of drama. And they may say, listen, it's worth it if Malik Willis turns out to be a star, then yes, it was worth it. But right now, they're in a weird, precarious spot. And I think right now they're in a worse spot than they were when they ended the season.
Fair enough. And look, I think that each situation needs to be taken on its own. That's why I don't blame him either, because he is in a competition. And I think you were right to point out that he's not in the same situation as a future Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
With where they have the security. But that's what kind of troubled me about how Ben reacted to a third round acquisition in the draft of Mason Rudolph, because Ben acted the same way. Ben, he's not a third round draft pick, is not taking your spot, especially with the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's not how they do business.
Yeah.
So he's clearly the guy for whenever you feel like you want to step away, then they want to usher him in. That's the goal, right? And so, to me, it's about being a good teammate at that point and trying to get the best out of your fellow teammates.
Agreed.
But if someone's being brought in to literally compete for your job, I get it then. All right, hey, we're in a competition here. I'll be friendly, I'll be cordial, but I'm not gonna, sit here and try and tell someone how to beat me. I mean, that's counterintuitive. So I totally get that aspect of things. And, maybe the Jimmy Garoppolo, Tom Brady situation was a little different as well because Bill Belichick clearly was
Second round
hoping
pick.
to move off of Tom
Yes.
before Tom was ready to move off of
Yeah.
his career himself.
Agreed. And I mean, Aaron had a right, I also think, to be frustrated because they used a first
they
round
spent
pick.
a first round capital. Yeah, absolutely.
That is prime capital for either adding a star player to your team or using it to trade. As we saw, look at what first round picks got people this year. Get you AJ Brown. Like, so I do think it's very different. I know it's maybe seem a little silly, but I think Tennessee is not the biggest loser, but I do think Tennessee is a team that was just the 1 seed and has had a really solid run since they traded for Tannehill and shocked a lot of people and had a better kind of 2.5-year run than many people thought they'd have and did a lot of things right. I think they've done some things right now to put themselves in a precarious spot to not exactly be better next year.
I think that's absolutely well taken, and I would agree with you there. For me, though, a much more glaring one would have been the Dallas Cowboys because you lose Amari Cooper, and you don't really bring anyone else into the fold necessarily. So you lose your best offensive playmaker because let's face it, Zeke Elliott's best years are behind him. Michael Gallup has not proven to be a clear number 1 target. So you lose your number 1 guy.
And CeeDee's good, but CeeDee hasn't proved to be a number 1 yet either.
Correct. Absolutely. And so, this year will be telling from that aspect of things. And, look, like we won't know how the draft panned out until, a couple years when we actually see how these players perform. But, overall their draft didn't scream, great success right off the bat. It seemed like a lot more project guys than anything else. So for a couple of those reasons, I think, in an NFC, they're lucky to be in the NFC East. And we've said that for, several years. But even with all of the luck that Dallas has gotten in terms of having a weaker division, they have not been able to take advantage remotely. No. Even when they've won in the past couple of years, they haven't turned that into playoff success. So for this team, to literally lose your best player, there's going to be obvious regression there right off the bat.
Well, and I would add on to it. Not only did Amari Cooper, they let him go. They only got a 5th round pick for him.
Yeah.
Look at what everyone else got for wide receivers. Now I get it. Amari Cooper's not Tyreek Hill. He's not Devontae Adams, but
or AJ Brown even.
I don't think he's too far away from AJ Brown. And for him to get 1st round pick and for you to just get a 5th rounder from Cleveland.
Yeah, you couldn't get a 3rd and like a 4th or something,
or a 3rd and a player or something. They didn't capitalize enough on him. And, so I tend to agree. I would agree that the Cowboys they didn't have a winning offseason, that's for sure.
And they franchise tagged Dalton Schultz. Not a bad tight end, but they're spending like a lot of money. Like DeMarcus Lawrence got $30 million guaranteed. He's a good player, but it's Dallas. We talked about it, for the past couple of years. The way they spend their money is very strange.
It is very strange. And one of the main reasons they had to get rid of Amari is because they don't have the money because they can't move Zeke's contract. And Zeke's contract is like the worst in football. He's the Russell Westbrook as far as football contracts go.
It's amazing that the Rams were able to keep the train rolling amid the Todd Gurley contract.
Yeah.
And it's like, so we've seen it can be done. You take your lumps for a year or two. But you sign 1-year deals, you franchise tag guys. Obviously, people wanting to go to LA helps, but
that helps.
It's like the Rams have been able to withstand bad contracts, whereas Dallas just can't seem to get out, from underneath any of them.
They keep signing them. They just keep signing them. They just keep lobbing up bad contracts.
And showing their draft board at press conferences to people.
I know. And Jared,
I can't believe we didn't talk about that.
I know. And Jared getting into car accidents. You see that? Jared got into a car accident this week.
I did see that. Yeah.
Did you have any else? That was it for me for the losers.
That's pretty much it for me too. Obviously there's a lot of lukewarm candidates, but really those are the ones that kind of stood out in terms of the winners and the losers.
Do you have, I would love to transition here really quickly as we're wrapping up the show to this whole quote from Pete Carroll.
Yeah. So I didn't see this. So
he was asked at the end of last week, he was like middle or end of last week, about trading for a quarterback. It was reporters alluding to Baker Mayfield, right? Baker Mayfield being out there. Obviously the Seahawks, their quarterback situation, what's going on. He was quoted as saying, "We are not exploring trades for the quarterback position at this time." And I think there was twofold. I think it's a clear message that the Seahawks, again, are fixated a little bit on Pete Carroll knows he's safe. He knows he's going to be allowed to kind of rebuild this team. And I do firmly believe the Seahawks' goal is to be in the top 3 next year picking. They have multiple draft picks. They have, I really think they understand they're going to lose a lot of games this year, but they built up a lot of cachet with their fan base. They have a rabid fan base, and they can quickly turn it around if it's a 1-year quick reset. I think, to me, that's what makes sense from what Seattle's doing from their draft and from other quotes. But let me pose to you this way, and I pondered on this, and it was something that I thought about, really discussing, but it was, the quote came at the weird time last week and things came up. So I really just wanted to try to see if my theory in this makes sense to you. Okay. I think this is also a larger message from ownership groups down through their GMs and their head coaches. If anyone asks you about Baker Mayfield in Cleveland and trading with Cleveland, just deny. I think the NFL owners and I think NFL other teams are pissed at Cleveland, and they're not happy. They're just not. We talked about the ripples of that Deshaun Watson fully guaranteed contract. I don't think the owners care about Deshaun Watson and the sexual misconduct, all that stuff. I just don't think they care. They care about the guaranteed contract. And this is
care about precedent.
This is the owners, I think, in a little bit of a way. I think there's a ownership blackballing of the Browns, and Baker's caught in the middle of it. Now, I don't think Baker's helped himself. If Baker was, it's hard to find a better comp, but I don't know, if he was Kirk Cousins, where it's like, no. That guy's a starter and he's maybe not a Super Bowl, but we can get to the playoffs. We need that guy to help us keep afloat, keep our jobs.
Well, he's just not a terribly controversial figure in the locker room, despite the whole vaccine thing, which obviously pissed Mike Zimmer off and stuff.
Or Dak Prescott. If the Cowboys had somehow gotten their hands on Patrick Mahomes, and it's well, of course, now it's obvious we're going to go with Patrick over Dak. So we need to find Dak a home. Dak would have had a home like that. Now, Dak is a little bit more talented than Baker, obviously. But you're right. Dak's done himself all the good press and the goodwill to our organization to be absolutely, we're going to make a trade and be aggressive to go get Dak Prescott. So Baker hasn't helped himself in that way. But I'm one of those people who doesn't necessarily believe in conspiracies. But I do believe in where there's smoke, there's fire. Baker Mayfield should have gotten traded by the draft. It should have happened. The asking price is low. I get it. You got to eat some dead money, and it's not the best cap hit, but there are teams out there who could use a Baker Mayfield in a myriad of ways, whether it's Atlanta, whether it's Carolina, the Giants, the Seahawks. I mean, there are teams out there who could use him. And I think this is a partial of the owners all looking around the league and going, don't do it. Let them figure this out. They made this mess. They put us in this bad contract situation. Now we got to deal with the fact that Deshaun Watson, the guy with all the allegations against him, gets the guaranteed big money. We got to figure that out. Now they threw that on us. Let them eat this and figure it out. Because if they have to cut him, which it looks like that's what they're going to just have to do, Baker Mayfield will get signed. And I even think the Seahawks could sign him. But I just think all these teams are not willing to throw Cleveland a lifeline. I don't think they want to throw Cleveland a lifeline. I think Cleveland has screwed themselves a little bit, but I think Cleveland would argue it was worth it because we now have our guy.
So I agree with a lot of what you said there. I think most teams in the league, if not all the teams in the league, are blackballing Cleveland, as you said, because of the move they made. But I also think this could be a two-tiered approach by Pete Carroll. And I say that because I think Pete also has a very personal and front row seat experience to quarterbacks making demands. And this could have been his way as well, to be like, no. We're not letting a quarterback dictate what we do here. We're not going to let a quarterback get what he wants.
Yeah.
Because we just shipped a guy out who was making demands. And we know that while things were cordial at times, there was obviously friction between Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson, what they wanted to do. And Pete was very much, I'm not, this guy's just a player. I'm not giving him the keys to the organization.
Yeah.
And so I think there was whispers of that in this response as well, to him wanting to make a statement about who's really running the show.
We're
in
not
Seattle.
trading for a quarterback. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're not going to capitulate to Cleveland, but we're also not going to capitulate to Baker Mayfield just because, he wants to get out of there, and we're going to give him a spot on a roster that he wants to go to. No, we're not going to do that. We're going to take you because we want to take you, not the other way around. I can absolutely see that being an aspect of it too.
Yeah, it's just interesting. I mean, this Baker Mayfield thing is so unique. I don't remember a situation like it before, ever, in my lifetime watching and covering the NFL in that way.
Well, I mean, you said they may have to cut him. What if Deshaun is facing a year-long suspension, let's say? I mean, Cleveland's best option is to have Baker Mayfield play. Whether or not he and obviously, like, if he just chooses to sit there, he's not going to make any money. So, I mean, do you see a situation where if Deshaun gets like where he somehow plays for the Cleveland Browns this year? I mean, it's weird to think about.
I don't. I think at that point the Browns would make the calls around the league to, bring in a Nick Foles. I mean, they would do whatever they had to do to not. Baker Mayfield to me is not ever playing for the Cleveland Browns again, because I think Baker Mayfield will make it known to them, I'm not playing for you ever again. And I agree with you. If Deshaun's gonna miss the whole season, they would want Baker. He's the best option on the market by far. Yeah, but they've screwed themselves. They just screwed themselves. And
Jacoby Brissett's not bad. I mean, if they had zero options, if it was like Colt McCoy, no offense. By the way, Colt McCoy is still in the league. He just signed another 2-year, $7.5 million deal.
Well, he's like Chase Daniel. Only he
Case
can.
Keenum,
Colt McCoy has proved that if you need to win one of the two starts I can help you win that one. He won that one for Arizona. And, he won one of the three he started for Arizona.
Yeah, he did it for Washington. He did it for Cleveland.
If you're Cleveland, I think, I mean, I'd roll with Brissett. If it's the whole year, then you want maybe to try and make some sort of other arrangements, or not. Maybe, you just sell to your fan base, listen, we're screwed this year. I mean, and that sucks because you waste a year of Myles Garrett, you waste a year of Amari Cooper, all these people that you bring in, and if you're willing to do that, maybe, but I don't know what else Cleveland would do, who them would be available to get. But again, I think it goes back to this. It's just a weird situation. Baker Mayfield, I know, I'm not a fan if you listen to the show, but for him to be in this situation and for no team to have taken the flyer, I think part of it is owners not wanting to help Cleveland out. They're pissed at Cleveland, and they want to make Cleveland figure this out on themselves, because as soon as Baker Mayfield gets cut and he's free to sign, watch the Panthers, the Falcons, and the Seahawks all inquire. Because Baker Mayfield makes a lot of sense for Pete Carroll, like as far as the guy that he wants to run his offense. He can make the deep shots when he needs to, but mainly it's dink and dunk and hand the ball off. So I think Baker Mayfield will have a chance if he gets cut. If it's a trade, I don't see teams making the trade, because I think they're trying to punish Cleveland. And Cleveland, whether you think they deserve it or not, I think it's a fair argument to have that Cleveland deserves the mess they've got themselves in.
Well, let me ask you this as we put a bow on the Baker Mayfield and the Browns situation. There was it was either a report or a book that came out from Jake Trotter about Baker Mayfield essentially accusing the Browns of purposefully putting him in a position to where his stock would tank by, I guess, basically throwing him to the fire in the final, especially the final week of the season, where
Playing
they didn't
injured
have
and
much
all
to
that.
play for, and playing injured, and that he is thinking that they purposely sabotaged his market as a retaliatory measure for his unhappiness. He didn't feel wanted. He thought that but it is bizarre because at the same time, like, Baker wanted to be on the field at all
Yeah.
times, but he thought their play calls and what they were doing, especially in the final game of the season against Pittsburgh, where they put a rookie right tackle on TJ Watt the entire game and never had anyone chip him or anything. To him, that was a telltale sign that they wanted him to look bad to send a message. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, here are my biggest thoughts. Baker Mayfield is a precautionary tale for every young quarterback out there. If the team actually ever offers you a legitimate, fair contract offer with guaranteed money, like it was reported that he had an offer, that it was something around $80 million guaranteed, and it would have been lower end. It would have been more like the Ryan Tannehill deal. Think about how much he's never going to get close to that now. He's going to be lucky if he starts more than 16 games in the rest of his NFL career.
Yeah, I mean, he'd have to dominate with a team
wherever he goes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a precautionary tale, and you see it. We've seen it before. It makes me worried for Lamar Jackson because of Lamar Jackson. He keeps betting on himself, and I get it. But if the team ever just makes you that offer, you can always earn another contract. If you're bad on that contract and you eventually get cut, that money's still guaranteed. And then you can say, all right, I'll start playing for the league minimum 1-year deals, blah, 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 this, whatever it may be. But if that money comes up, I'm not just saying that, you need to take whatever the team throws at you. But if you think it's somewhere in the ballpark, it's fair, you have got to be realistic of who you are and your own expectations. I worry about it for Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray keeps saying, well, we're going to get a deal done. If you keep out negotiating yourself, the season will start. They will play the games. And if you get injured or things go poorly, you could be in a bad spot, and that money's never coming back. Look at the Cubs, their past offseason. It's rumored that Rizzo turned down almost like 75, 80 million from the Cubs going at this time last year, like, a little over a year ago going to last year. They all bet on themselves. He got half that in this year's free agency from New York. Baez, same thing. Chris Bryant got about what the Cubs offered him in Colorado. But again, they're betting on yourself. It worked for Joe Flacco, but it doesn't always work. So let me just start with that as a precautionary tale. And it does. I don't want that to sound like, I know it's not like a bunch of NFL players listen to us, but I don't want that to sound like I'm siding with the teams. I'm not. I'm siding with the fact is take that. That's life-changing money. Like 70, 80, 90 million guaranteed. Like don't be stupid. Like take that money. And then things go well. Hold out, get more money, get signing bonuses, make them pay you in other ways, get those endorsement deals, play through that contract, get another big contract. Aaron Rodgers is on his third $100 million contract. Now, not everyone's Aaron Rodgers, but if you play long enough, you can keep making that money. So take that when they give it to you. If it's somewhere that you think is respectable and fair enough, don't get your head out of the clouds a little bit. You know what I mean? And I know that's hard to say because of Deshaun Watson and what he just got, but you can put yourself in a really bad spot, really, really bad spot. So let me say that.
Clearly an outlier given the historic nature of that deal.
Secondly, I'll just say this. Baker Mayfield also has control of his own career. There were reports that the Browns wanted him to shut it down and have surgery. There were reports that Baker wanted to play through the injury in that shoulder because it's non-throw. Because, he's a prideful guy. If Baker Mayfield would have shut it down and got the surgery, where would we be?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think
very likely Deshaun's not a Brown right now.
Well, maybe not, but maybe not. But also, I think it's very likely that Baker Mayfield has a starting job somewhere. I think that's part of it as well. So these are precautionary tales, and it sucks. Do I think that the Browns would purposely try to make Baker look bad? I don't. Kevin Stefanski doesn't seem like that kind of guy. I don't think that he would be their organization. It doesn't make sense for my point of view as an organization to devalue an asset if you know you're going to try to trade that asset.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you're still tied to that asset. So I mean, I know that's a long response to a simple question, but I do think it needs to be said. What we're seeing with Baker Mayfield, it's frustrating because you see it with a lot of athletes. I mean, man, look at Dennis Schroeder. Dennis Schroeder in the NBA, the Lakers would give him $100 million. He said, no, I think I'll go get more. He ended up signing for like $10 million with Boston. Now he's not even in the league. Like
Le'Veon Bell.
Le'Veon
Bell had a multi-year deal with the Steelers and got way less than he thought he was going to get with the Jets.
And good for like Todd Gurley. It sucks that Todd Gurley got injured. He could have been a really great player, like all-time great. But the dude got his money. And and the same with Zeke. I don't blame Zeke. The dude they offered it, sign your name, because you force them to keep making the choice. Do I keep you? Do I trade you? What do we do? Like, it keeps you employed. It keeps you alive for that starting job, for those conversations. But when you're negotiating against yourself, just trying to get more and more and more because it's like, hey, I want to get my money now off that rookie deal, I just don't think it makes sense, especially when you have all the commercial success that a Baker had. He was the number one overall pick, so it's not like he was poor. I mean, he had probably about like $28-30 million guaranteed off that rookie deal alone. Like, there's real money there and I don't feel bad for Baker. He's probably saved his money well and done smart with it. He'll be fine, but
He's got those progressive commercials to
it's a precautionary tale for all of these guys. If there's guaranteed money and multiple years on a contract and it's somewhere that's fair, at least, I mean, I don't know how more of these guys aren't seeing what's happening and being like, listen, it just keeps me employed. It keeps me going. And it's all generational money. Talk about millions of dollars. If you're smart with it, you don't just go buy Lambos and chains.
Exactly. I have a sneaking suspicion we won't be hearing news about Baker Mayfield over the next week in terms of a trade or a new team for him. This may be a long, dragged-out situation for several weeks, if not months, going into training camp as well. So that'll be something, obviously, we'll keep our eyes glued on as that gets closer. But, of course, Thursday we've got the NFL schedule release, so I'm sure that will be good subject matter, Mark.
Can't wait.
For next week's episode, so looking forward to that. But that will do it for us here on our off-season winners losers episode here on the Football Lounge. Check us out on social media for sure, at Mark Hespin, at Dan Vasco, at FB Lounge Pod, and our YouTube channel as well. See you next week.